Okay, this is the meeting of the Dog Park Committee of March 1st, 2007. And I guess I don't have to ask if there are other people here who are recording the meeting. Dick is the only one who is, and he's authorized. I have for you, in case you're interested in seeing what we have planned today, a very short agenda. And I kind of promised I might get you out really early, if that was all right. No one minded.
Thank you.
Of course, we cut your hours, we have to cut your salary too, huh? That's all right.
I have work.
And I think we've got some minutes somewhere that might be first in our,
I apologize for sending the wrong attachment this morning. Those were one of my finer moments.
keeps
Trying
us
to get
awake.
everything out.
Yeah, keeps us awake.
And thank you for checking Howard and
That's
catching
funny,
me.
Howard.
I appreciate it.
I was reading it and having deja vu. I'm like, wait a minute.
Gold star.
Well, there was a number at the beginning. It was 221, and it should have been 222,
Yes,
right?
I saved
Yeah.
them in the incorrect order.
All right. I would only say in the last paragraph on the first page, first line of the last paragraph, it should be Town Engineer William Coyle with a C,
Thank you.
which it is on the next page anyway, so we know you know who it was.
But you know, the joys of multitasking backfiring.
That's okay. My name is O-N at the end, not A-N, but that's okay.
Where did I do
The
it?
last page.
Thank you.
I didn't even notice it. I read the whole thing and I didn't even notice it. But that's because I read it on my computer.
I don't see it. Please tell me.
Oh, last paragraph.
Last full paragraph.
Last full paragraph.
Awesome. Thank you. I need visual aids and assistance sometimes. Stand by.
It's okay because it spelled it right everywhere else. And then,
Okay. Is there anything else we need to correct or change or add? If not, I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes. Someone would be so kind as to offer it.
I can't do it.
Motion to approve the minutes?
a second.
Okay, moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously voted. Okay, now we've got reports from the two groups. I've seen the community outreach fact sheet, which is quite impressive, so if you guys would like to say anything, go right ahead.
Do you want to do it? Do you want me to?
Nicole, you did all the typing.
Yeah.
While we
You're-
sat there.
You're a teacher, so you're so used
You were
to
the
this.
one, yeah.
So we got together a couple days ago and kind of started to brainstorm at what we would like to put out there for the public, those more or less who are uninformed when it comes to what a dog park is actually going to be like, and hopefully alleviate some concerns that are not necessary concerns. So we will have, hopefully, a nice pretty PDF. So this is just the text that we would like to put on that PDF for just like a rough draft, and we'd like for you guys to take a look at it and add anything or remove anything. Any suggestions you have would be wonderful. For starters, one of the concerns brought up is cleanup. And we certainly can't ensure that all people will be responsible and pick up after their dogs just like you can't anywhere else. But having a designated area for dogs to roam freely in the town will hopefully decrease waste in other public areas. People who will be using the park frequently are more apt to pick up after their pet, considering they'll be returning the next day or the next few days. You're not going to want to have a messy place that they use all the time. Pet cleanup stations will be readily available at the park, and I have a confirmation from the Auburn Fur Friends that they will replenish those bags and they will maintain the poop station. They're also committed to coming at minimum weekly to help clean up anyone's left behind waste if they did not pick up. So we were really appreciative of their willingness to help out in that area.
Absolutely.
The littering, obviously, this is just a matter of fact to put out there too. Littering and not picking up after your pet are both against the law anyways. And while we can't force people to follow the law, anyone caught doing this could be fined accordingly. So that's just a reminder. For cost, another concern brought up, how much is this going to cost? You know, taxes, et cetera, et cetera.
Excuse me.
And the project is only possible because there is an existing grant called the Stanton Grant. This grant will cover all design costs as well as 90% of construction costs. The remaining upfront costs and maintenance will be taken care of as follows. The nonprofit, again, Fern Group, has committed to raising the 10% balance for construction costs. The DPW already maintains the properties being considered. Those who wish to use the park will be, and I believe this was confirmed, but we probably should double check with Julie again to make sure, but I believe the plan is to have a fee to use the park, which would go towards maintenance costs, which is really just going to actually benefit the town because the DPW already maintains it. So now we're putting money at something that's already being spent anyways.
Hello.
And then the last piece there was dog license fees alone come into the town every year and bring in more than $25,000 to the yearly fund. So it's only fair to have a little area for them to go, you know, run around a little bit. For noise complaint, that's another one. And I'd like to do a little bit more research, didn't really have enough time, and have some facts from research to back these up. But as all of us have pets know, they're actually less likely to bark when they're well exercised and they're well socialized. And when you go to a dog park, there's very minimal barking because they're too busy running around like crazy. But I'd like to not just make statements. I'd like to do a little bit more research and get some facts, but I didn't have the time to do that, and I can do that in the next week or so before we finalize this. But basically, well-exercised dogs are better behaved and less likely to bark while in their home. So not only at the dog park, but back at home, they're probably going to pass out, and they're not going to be as much of a nuisance as they might be. Research of similar towns that we've done from our second meeting, I want to say, when I came back. Similar population, similar dog population towns. The max at the most beautiful days, peak hours were 10 to 15 dogs in a very large area. So we're not talking about 50 dogs here, so that's also a bonus. And finally, dog park hours will be set by the town and will follow Lemansky's existing hours, which are dawn to dusk. So there will not be barking at 10 o'clock at night because they'd be trespassing. You're not supposed to be there at that time anyways. Right. Safety, probably the most important one. An extremely large amount of thought and care has gone into the selection of this site. While it is our hope that there will not be any issues with the creation of a dog park, there's always a chance of an accident. And with all public areas, the town is not liable in any way for the actions of people or their pets. Owners alone are responsible for the actions of their pets. Well-socialized and exercised dogs make excellent canine citizens, thus alleviating many potential issues. Designated areas for dogs keep other public areas safer. So people who are running, hopefully people will prefer to bring their dogs to the dog park than running with their dogs, or there's a lot of dogs on areas that they're not supposed to be, such as like the Pappas complex, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully by having this area, those areas will be used less. So they will have obviously this area to exercise, interact off leash, and out of that area, they are required to follow the leash laws of the town when not in the designated area. So it's no different than if they were in their yard and or on their street or at a baseball game. The laws are the laws, and people should be following them regardless. And a dog park's not going to change that in any way. If the Lemansky area is chosen where the skate park is now, using the interactive maps online, I did the closest point like on the parking lot to the grass where the skate park is to the closest point of the playground, and it's over 250 feet away. which is a great bonus because they're really, unless children or, running around, so, at that point, dogs will be on leash or under voice control, and I mean, there shouldn't be too much interaction, honestly, with that amount of space, and that's the closest points possible. So that's a benefit for sure, that they're not going to be as close. And that's pretty much it. We've also discussed, obviously, door-to-door letters, etc. So we still need a little bit more time to talk about those things because we really devoted the majority of our time to this. So that's it so far.
Very impressive.
I think this is fabulous.
Any questions
info.
or comments,
Input.
changes you'd make?
I have an idea about a site for the research.
Yes, thank you.
I know that in the letter Nancy Sarkeesian had provided about the co-funding, she cited the AKC guidelines for dog park best practice. And I did go on there and read it to see if there was anything that conflicted with what we wanted to do. And it seems to be aligned nicely. But I thought there were some good facts
Okay.
where they provide a couple of full pages of veterinary behavioral research. And then, so it would be a very good primary source to back
Great.
it up.
Thank you.
And then the only other point that I don't see on here that I know came up
Yep.
profoundly with the public meeting in the selectmen's room was property value.
Oh, yes.
Folks were arguing essentially that their property value would be negatively impacted. And I conducted independent research and I found nothing that correlates with an adverse impact.
Okay.
But I know that's likely to be,
No research.
but please don't quote me.
Right.
I didn't find any on Google, but that doesn't
Right.
mean-
Yes. Yep. No,
Okay.
that's good to look into. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I think this is fabulous.
Thank you.
Is it your
Yeah.
plan to do like a brochure?
Yeah. Well, brochure or even just a flyer, almost
Yeah.
like a PDF with large font for each of the main areas with a little sentence intro and the bullets underneath is pretty much what we're thinking
Yeah.
about, which is easy. And also we would be able to post that on the Auburn site, so people are able to read that easily.
The only thing I would suggest is putting maybe a title on this that kind of calls it out a little bit more as to what it is. I mean, I think the AKC comment is spot on because it gives just another data point in terms of, facts and stuff
Sure.
like that, so I think that's a great idea. Other than that, I think it's what we need. And we should see if we could post this up on the town website.
Yep.
And you can
Yep.
take this and stick this in multiple locations.
Yep,
Yep.
yep, and I'd like to get a list of the abutters at the area, at the Lemansky site, so we can mail it to them. We could post it on Facebook. I was thinking also Petco and some of the other grooming,
Sure.
That's a
grooming
great idea.
salons
Yeah.
and shelters
Or
and stuff in the
vet- or
area,
vet-
vets,
yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Good.
Any suggestions on a title? I'm not that creative.
Maybe throw a couple of cheap graphics in there. You can
Yeah.
steal them, snag them from somewhere on the web.
Yep.
Just so when you look at it, you kind of you're like, okay, I know what this is, as opposed to
Right.
the 2 second in the trash.
The other things we had talked about were we were wondering if you had gotten a chance to speak with the family members of the man
Memorial.
who the Memorial Skate Park. No, okay. And Jackie had a really good idea. No, didn't.
No, I didn't.
Okay, she didn't. All right. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
A clandestine idea at this point.
That's how I met it.
All right.
No.
What else?
Select a date.
Yes.
We wanted to talk about a date
Oh, right.
that would be at least 2 weeks prior to the selectmen meeting that we would go to invite any local abutters or anyone from the town who has questions or wants to know a little bit more information. So I know we had talked about that before, but we put that on our agenda of maybe solidifying a date to do that and invite the public to attend. We can do that later, but that was just on our to-do.
To-do list.
I think this is great. Very, very comprehensive.
Thanks.
Did you mention reaching out to the family
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that's what you were doing, but it was
Yeah.
disrupted. Okay.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would say, with respect to like communicate, before we communicate a date, the only dependency I see is kind of the cost analysis.
Yeah.
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
Because to me, from what I'm seeing, there's a few moving pieces to this, and based on, scheduling and availability, whether or not that's all gonna come into fruition, I think we'll get to that later on tonight.
Yeah,
but-
yep. Any event we have, people are going to be asking about amenities
Yeah.
and things
We
like
need to have
that.
that.
So we need that
Yeah.
that side from you as well. So
Sure.
Okay, cost analysis group. I know that you've been busy, but
Busy, but not necessarily.
yeah,
with
I
outcomes.
was going to say that that's a hard thing to come up with because there is so much information that you need to get.
I mean, at this point, we're really kind of in a holding pattern pending information from the town. That request was made based on a list that Jim prepared and developed spreadsheets with awaiting input for costs. Is that a fair description of your work process?
I might describe it a little bit differently. I mean,
Please.
I think the first step is, let's align on what the costs are in terms of cost types, right? Before we get into how much things cost, or options within costs. I mean, let's get a list of what the costs are, because then that's gonna be the next step is, all right, how do we get pricing on that? And I'm not entirely convinced that the town will be able to give us prices on every cost component. I'm suspecting they'll probably be able to give us the majority, but I don't know in terms of some of the amenities that we may wanna, slide in there if they're within budget, whether or not that's stuff that they've ordered and have exposure to in the past. So then that might require us to make a few phone calls to kind of get some quotes on some of those types of items. There definitely is a tight correlation between cost and the size of the parcel that we're looking at. So without, knowing for sure what that could be, that obviously puts us, within, a large realm of risk from a cost perspective. So I'd like to just kind of throw that out there for just a quick discussion. I mean, I've gone out there, I've got some things I can show you in terms of printouts that I took. Is how much do we all think in terms of space is available in that area? And the terrain there is kind of, also it is very hilly, and it backs right into a hill. So if you attempt to kind of cut into the hill, from what I know, you're going to end up looking at, retaining wall type structures, which retaining walls and stone don't tend to be cheap. So I just want to get people some feel about what people think about that. The first one is,
parcel?
I'm going to just kind of send this, and
Romansky, I think it's
if everyone's okay with this, I'm going to send this around in such an order. This is just the red lines that you see across that. That just indicates that there's some utility lines, that run across that red line. Now, whether or not that's 100% water plus electric plus sewage, I don't know. That somebody else is going to have to, go ahead and give us a sense. The next one I'm going to show you is it's just the total square footage of the current skater park. All right, and then you'll see a number in the bottom here in the red. That's basically what was the calculation. So just the skater park alone is roughly 15,000 square feet. If we were just to kind of build a park on that spot, which obviously is almost half
Right.
less than what we had looked into in terms of total size. Okay. The next picture goes a little bit deeper if we were to just kind of expand up to from the back of the current skating park right up to the parking lot, and that's 22,000 square feet. So we're getting a little bit better, but we're not necessarily at 30. The next one kind of gets a little bit more creative, and maybe we can even get a little bit more creative than this and kind of maybe bow around the corner there.
yeah,
This
I know what you mean.
this is like 30,000 square feet. Again, this thing kind of sits, you know, it's kind of like the bottom of a hill basin that's all on the side.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Look at the entrance of it.
So that's, you know, that's like a 30,000. And this one, once I went to go, see this later on, earlier on today, this one I think is harder to do because you end up having to go deeper into that hill,
I keep saying
and that
that.
hill goes right up.
Yeah, you,
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, I know
yeah,
where that
that's-
is. Yep.
So it seems to me that if we want to get closer to 30,000 square feet, then we've got to kind of do some sort of an L shape with maybe a curve. It's kind of almost like maybe a cursive L that hugs the bottom of that bend but doesn't start
Yeah.
the incline up the hill.
I like that one that goes around the parking lot.
We also talked about, if we were to fence in that area, wouldn't we want, we might want to put fence up on those areas that go up, put the fence up there, if that was possible. So then you're not looking at it, right, being right at the bottom of the hills. Weren't we talking, was it us that were?
Yeah,
Or
I
was
think
it
so. You
someone
know,
else?
it was.
That I was talking to about it, I think it was us, because we were saying, that way, the dogs had, I don't know if they could go up on that area,
Yeah.
but it was just more along the lines of putting the fence in a strategic place, so you weren't just
Yeah.
getting
I mean,
all of that
And
water
it's,
at
it's
the
okay
bottom.
to run, for the dogs to be running up and down hills, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Well, that's, I mean, there is to a point, but there's definitely elevations there,
Yeah.
right through that whole
Right,
thing.
no,
And
I
it's-
know
it's
exactly
not a
what you're
flat
saying,
surface
no.
type of stuff. So, I mean,
But it does
when you
go
start
back.
playing with elevations, I mean, there's things around drainage,
Yep.
and all that
Yep.
stuff that come into play. Now, I know enough to be dangerous because I built a couple of houses and I know how the whole site location stuff works, but I'm not going to sit there and say I'm an expert. I just
Right.
know enough to ask questions that we should get answers to before we say yes, yes, yes. I mean, another thought as I'm thinking about that L shape and that curvature, maybe, something we might think about is maybe kind of, go into the corner of that parking lot, and then kind of have the double gate there, maybe to the right, that kind of branches off into a large section of the dog park, and maybe to the left is for a smaller park,
Right.
for smaller
Right.
dogs. I mean, that's
Right.
another option that we can kind of play in there.
That
But
would-
I really think we have to get
space.
more, in order to get more specific from a cost perspective, we have to get more specific on the square footage and
Of usable
where
space.
this is gonna lay on this. On top of that, I also kind of looked up around, I didn't get out of my car, but, I looked in that area that's up in here, which I think is what folks are kind of talking about in
The other
terms
area,
of the
yeah.
skate park.
yeah.
Well, that's kind of a little hilly and got some hips and and dips and things of that sort. I didn't go up there to stand on the platform to kind of get a sense of is that elevated space comparable to what the skate park has now. But that's something else that probably needs a closer look because that may not be an apples to apples comparison because if you've got these deep divots in the hills, then you're not necessarily going to be able to have
That whole
the
area that they're looking at
Right.
is completely flat.
Yeah, the Mason
The area
Center-
that's down here and all the other hilly area where they're proposing to build the skate park is not. That whole entire area is really flat. So it would really depend on what that big flat area square footage is.
Is that the only other thing I would point out too? Are you talking more like up in here?
Yeah.
The only other thing that I noticed that, and again, it's the timing of the year, so not everything's fully grown back in terms of bush and stuff like that. Is you can, the person that lives over in this area can kind of get a real tight look in terms of what this area is over here. Now, I don't know if that, they're probably already used to seeing kids and cars and traffic already, but that's just something I'd point out that might come back as a concern from
Well, I know they
whoever
use
it
that.
butts.
I know I've seen them practice over there.
They might use it for sledding. I mean, if I'm sitting there in that
soccer.
neighborhood, those
I've
kind
seen
of
a
little
couple
hills,
of different
you know.
teams and a couple, maybe they're not school teams, but I've seen a couple of different teams. Because I used to go there quite frequently, and so you see them play all the time. So there's, at a when everything is being used, sometimes there's a good 10, 15 kids on that side. But not all the time, it's just when everything else is being used up, I see people go over there.
Right. So I think we really need.
So I don't know if it's a sound issue, but I'm just saying.
No, I'm just throwing out as devil's advocate
Yep.
because these are the types
Oh,
of
sure.
things that somebody can
Sure.
walk in, in terms of, an open meeting and say, hey,
And you need
I
the
live there,
answers.
type
Yeah,
of
no,
stuff.
right.
We need the answers. So, I mean, to me, we have to get out there with the site engineer to kind of talk through
That's
some of these things and maybe get some recommendations. Okay, well, if you did that and you tweaked it this way, maybe that makes a little bit better sense. And now if we start kind of getting closer to that, Now we're gonna get more closer to what the desired, size of the
Then you
footprint
can get a
can be.
cost.
And then obviously you gotta do that also for the skater park, because if you're gonna try to pitch that, hey, guess what, we're gonna have this dog park and it's gonna be great, but, we're gonna move this skater park, as well, and then you're saying it's 50 cents on the dollar in terms of what you might be able to get over there, well then, now this site begins to have more holes than we had initially hoped for.
And with regards to a site visit, as I had mentioned, I reached out, said we wish to schedule one, and I believe the process is they want to get prices first and then schedule that.
I don't know how they,
Do it, right.
you can get unit costs. From what you sent an email, there obviously is some examples of unit cost. But in terms of, for instance, if they're going to have to look at, with the water line, for instance, right? Well, based on where we put this, and I don't know for sure if you have, for instance, if you just tap into the water line there, or do you have to kind of go up here across the street and tie? I don't know that, and I'm not sensing that anyone here at the table, because no one's jumping out and saying, no, Jim. I'm not sensing that anyone else here knows that either. So, all of a sudden, we need to know the positioning of this area, because now we've got to, be able to run it, if that's pipe or sewage, and that's on, now we've gone from 50 feet to 100 feet, well, that 50 feet to 100 feet just increases the, end cost,
Right.
which then would need to be represented in our budget type of a thing.
Right.
So, I can get I can give you some unit costs, in terms of price per linear foot, price for square, area. But until we get go out and look at it, we're not going to be able to get into too many dimensions, in my opinion. But, they may be able to tell us something differently that I don't know. I'm not saying I got this figured out 100%.
Yeah. The advantage to that site is that they have water to irrigate the field, the full-sized football field down there, and they have electricity going to the scoreboard. There are hookups right at that scoreboard, so.
Which is
both-
on that end of the field.
Yeah.
Which is on the end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think in terms of options, because, in terms of if you get into a tight situation with costs and stuff like that, I don't have enough data to say that we're in range of budget one way or another, right? But I think one of the options that we need to maybe align on is what the surface type is going to be. Because at this point, we're building on asphalt, right, which I don't know if we necessarily have to dig up or not, that might be something we can lay on top of. But what are we going to put on top of that? Because, I didn't study it in great depth, but I definitely know there's pros and cons in terms of whether you use, natural grass versus pea stone versus wood chips or stuff like that. So, I don't know if anybody's got any data points or, opinions on that, but I see that as kind of a big potential option that, could drive the cost. I have to think that pea stone might be a little bit more expensive than maybe mulch, but, what's our thoughts on that? And as far as the other, costs, when do we get into some of the amenities, maybe that's where there's some differentiation, and then there's more, variation in costs, per item. But, a lot of this other stuff, water, surface, water, sewer, irrigation, lighting and power, waste management type stuff. A bench, a picnic table. This is stuff that I have to think that we've got cost estimates from other projects that we've done in town that we could get some data points on. So I think the only open-ended question is, what do we think is our surface of choice? Do we have a 1A, do we 1B, or no one really care?
We were talking about.
Can I,
Yeah.
sorry, can I just really quickly, it might actually help a little bit. I believe, I don't know exactly of the things that you just listed that are covered by the Stanton grant. And that might be something to look at.
All of that stuff was put down there as like options. That's where I got the information from.
It was, okay,
Yeah.
so it's something, part of the construction costs?
yeah.
Yes.
Even benches?
Not
No,
benches, I don't
yeah, I
think
don't think
benches,
benches
they
would be covered.
did talk about,
Shading?
yes,
Yeah.
Fencing,
a
water,
sideless,
right,
backless, shelter type
right,
Right.
building that would provide shade,
Shade.
yeah,
But
and
if you put a
that
bench under
would
that,
be
that's not
covered.
covered.
Yeah,
right,
Yeah,
okay,
right.
okay,
Benches or tables aren't covered.
right, okay, that's my thought.
and in
But-
terms of benches and tables, the town, through the Parks Department, uses those at a lot of its sites, so they must, you know, if there is
No, the cost.
some sort of savings by buying in bulk, the town is probably
Right.
into that.
Yeah, and if we're getting, I don't know, it's all about creative accounting. I don't mean that to be deceptive, but I mean, you can be creative with accounting and get things to work. I mean, you know, you
Right.
could have the Fur Friends more or less take care of some of those amenities as part of their contribution, you know, dollars to it, and then that way you kind of, you know, you get, you know, whatever coming from the Stanton Foundation to go through whatever it's, you know, allows.
Right. And then I was also wondering, with the cost part, there may be a cost to move the skate park. So that I may need to put that on the fact
Yep.
sheet.
Right, because are we responsible for that?
Well,
That's-
that's
Is that
a
something
right
that's
spot
tied
on
in
question.
to Stanton? So that's
As
something that I
I
wanted to
read that Stanton again this week, I thought that it's included.
Okay.
Because it says changes necessary to
Necessary.
the present site.
So.
Which that would be.
mean tearing down the skate park, but it wouldn't mean rebuilding the skate park.
No, that's I think
So
you're
it would mean
exactly
tearing it
right.
down but not rebuilding it.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But to have it rebuilt somewhere else.
Will cost money.
Would cost the town.
Site
Would-
clearing
but not-
costs.
Would-
Right.
Yeah.
so the devil of the
Associated
details on that needs to be
grading.
vetted out
Yes.
further in terms of what's
Right.
included versus what the extra cost would be to the
Okay.
town. I mean, really, the only thing that you're gonna move or potentially move is the headstone that they have for the memorial and some of the skate-related stuff.
Yep.
I mean, you're not gonna move the asphalt, you're not gonna move the fencing. I mean, that fencing more or less can be repurposed.
The fencing you might. They
Yeah.
said the fencing is in
The
such
fencing,
good
mhm.
condition
Right.
that that's possibly,
But it might be a cheaper option though.
Yeah.
If you know you're gonna have
Yeah.
fencing for the dog
For
park
the
already,
dog
it might
park,
be less
with
labor to go up and have
yeah.
just apply money to putting this, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
fencing around the skater park, that way type of thing.
As a seemingly irrelevant point, but an important one in my opinion, did anyone notice the vandalism on that memorial stone?
Yeah.
Stone when
Yeah, I
we
got a
went out?
picture of it.
Yeah, I thought that was at best in poor taste. But I didn't know if anyone else had noted that.
No, I noticed. I mean, it's,
Noticed it.
it's unfortunate. It's certainly not uncommon. I mean, it's the way sometimes members of society operate.
I hear that. However, I think my larger point was perhaps when it is repositioned,
Yeah.
Okay.
one,
fix
it
it.
will need to be
Right, fix
cleaned,
it.
Yes.
restored,
Yeah.
but two, perhaps it could be in a more visible place as a deterrent to future vandalism.
I mean, I get the desire, I just don't know how practical it is. I mean, people, you can hop the fence or come in through multiple directions, and if it's dark out, you'll get it in there, unless there was some sort of like, you know, shield that like popped over it, you know, at nighttime. I mean, it's gonna be exposed, no matter how you slice it.
But
And in
restoring
my
it.
idealistic
For
world,
restoring
Yeah,
it, I
restoring
yeah,
it.
I do that too.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Did you talk to your kids, the students, about the ones who use the park?
I haven't yet. I'm hoping to speak to them tomorrow.
Okay.
Because we had a day where we didn't have activity and
Yeah.
like there was assembly, and so now I'm gonna hopefully do that before the end of the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
when all of us have gone down to look at the park, and I think it's great that we have we noticed skaters utilizing the park?
Not
Well,
seen a skate.
Not now,
Not
not
in
this
the
time of
winter.
year,
I'm sorry,
But
no,
typically in the
what was
summer.
it?
Noted skaters using
No,
the
I was
park?
there today, you know, around 4 o'clock, and I noticed
It's
that
after
one there.
school.
Because I went on the weekend and after school, just to see, and no one.
Mm-hmm.
I have gone frequently in the summer, and I
In the
just
summertime, it's busy.
In the
Yeah.
summer, yeah.
It's there.
Well, I think the change in the time will
Yeah.
also influence that, you know, if it was getting lighter at night soon around the corner.
Sure.
So we need to get clarity on the, as you said, the details with regards to removing and rebuilding.
Right.
Well, it looks like both groups have been pretty busy and pretty successful so far. If we're looking for the optimum time, I suppose we say if we're meeting in 2 weeks, again, it would be nice to be about ready to set a date for the public unveiling of the project. We should by then be able to get some sort of direction from the selectmen as to when they would like our report to them. And I know that they will be busy now until late in April, early in May, both on town elections and on town meeting and town budget, so.
Just one question about the scheduling, because you just mentioned meeting again in 2 weeks. I know when we first started meeting, we were meeting every other week, but we just met 2 consecutive weeks. So are we going to have this room available to us
Yes.
in 2 weeks?
Yes,
it'll
we'll
be-
be back
it'll be an
on the
off week.
schedule that we were on initially, and it was reserved for those.
Last week was the weird week. This is
Yeah,
the
last
original.
week
Last
was,
week was?
Yeah.
yeah, that, and
This
that
is
was
the
the
normal
a problem with the snowstorm and the
That we
meeting,
had.
they
Okay,
didn't
all right,
get
I just
posted.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So, yes, it will be, this room will be available
Okay.
every other weekend, 2 weeks from now. Actually, today is the on week in terms of scheduling. There are other rooms too. We have had committees meet in the basement. There's a little room there where the employees take their lunch break that is sometimes used as a meeting room. Probably would get away from television, wouldn't we? It's a,
We'd take it.
yeah. So you have done well, and I am very, very happy with that.
Thank you.
Is there other business? I promise you I would get you out of here.
Would you be able to speak with the family
I
of,
don't know the family.
or maybe the
Sarah,
police
how would
chief
you-
might be able to point you in the right direction?
Yeah, I will see the chief again,
Okay.
although he was not, the present chief was not chief at the time.
They might have records.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure we could
Yeah.
locate them, and we could locate them if they're still in town.
Right.
It was long enough ago so that the parents of the patrolmen, probably ancient like I am.
So I still have a couple of questions to make sure we're in alignment on a couple of things. I mean, first is, what is the ideal size of this dog park that we're basically kind of drawing a line in the sand around?
39 was the average, but if you got up over 30, I think you'd be all
I
right.
think if we can get to 30, then that would be perfect.
Okay, do we want to put that on the record that?
And, from the people that I talked to from the Fur Friends, and you guys could back me up on this better, they said 30 would be good. Give you room for a small dog area, which wouldn't need to be as big as a large dog area.
My only
So-
concern is, Jim, sorry.
Go ahead.
On this map, do you remember when you looked at this, was this part over here hilly?
Well, I included that a little bit, but the hill's not that far off, so, I mean,
Yeah.
you might get a little bit, the ramp up, but, as soon as you get into the brush,
Right,
it
then it's,
it
I have
takes
the
off.
map up if you want to see it. You can see where the
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you've got a,
Yeah, so it's mostly flat.
you have a little space
So,
behind it, but
yeah.
then it drives up quickly.
Yeah. One of the advantages also is that the drainage is all surface drainage. It runs in those deep gullies on either side of the football
Right.
field
Yeah.
down to the road. It's picked up at the road at the lower part there. So that drainage is not a necessity of pipe installation
Right.
and catch basins. The L-shaped one, which had over 30,000, they might even consider taking out that little jog and making that dog park too.
Right.
Yep.
How much, just, I mean, I'm sensing this still has a lot of maybes. As much as I like the idea of this site and all that stuff, it sounds like everybody else does, there seems to be a lot of, maybes, what ifs, depending on what we learn type of stuff. Going back to the Boyce Street one, I mean, how much square footage did that one have? Was that an acre?
That was an acre.
I actually asked a question
Okay.
of Amy with regards to the size. So I'm just gonna read a paragraph from an email if that's okay. The total parcel size of the top lot is 1.6 acres, or about 69,700 square feet. And if you have an idea of how much of the park would be fenced off for a dog park, I can get you the square footage. However, best memory, and this is a rough estimate, I believe there to be about 35,350 square feet of relatively flat open land.
I like how that's a rough estimate.
Yes. But
It's a very specific
but it
estimate.
came from the engineer.
Yeah.
So-
Right.
And I also have that for Lemansky also, I just didn't have the opportunity to share.
But that's pretty much, I mean, under that scenario for that lot, that's pretty much everything. That means like rip and replace of any type of playground apparatuses that are there and pulling those out, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, I unfortunately have to do a lot of risk management in the world because I don't always believe that what we hope true often comes true. Let's just say if we're able to get the town manager, you know, relatively soon, and we're able to get out there and he kind of, you know, validates things that may not be in the direction that we want, right? How do we want to handle that so that we're not necessarily losing any more time? Does everyone agree that if we get that type of data that we immediately are switching over to voice? Or I just don't want us to kind of, you know, continue to wait another 2 weeks before we can make a decision, and then, you know, the process continues to get pushed out on the calendar. So I was curious, given that we've got a few what if scenarios here, what's our thoughts on that?
Ron, I think you were out when you proposed this lot last week. What exactly did you hear? For who did you speak to that suggested this?
All right,
this
I
lot?
spoke to Amy first, who said the idea had come from Julie. Then I went to Julie,
Yep.
and Julie and I had a conference call with the police chief. And that's, you know, how it came to my attention.
All right. So I mean, if they're leaning towards this, I'm feeling like it's a pretty good chance that they won't say no.
What do you mean?
The idea came from them to do this.
Julie Mansky?
Yes.
Mhm.
This spot, yes.
Yeah, unless there was some
Yes.
other snag, and there's always
It's always possible,
possibility
but-
that you'd run into some problem.
But right
with
now, we're
Jim
you know,
says.
the chance that they're going to say no is small.
Yeah. But we have to please several different
Yes.
constituents, you know, we've got to please
Yeah.
not only the town professionals who have been involved so far, but also the Board of Selectmen, and the fur friends, and the abutters, and the skate park users, and so that, you know, that pleasing one of those groups is not enough. We've got to
Right.
convince more people.
And there may be, you know, it may not be possible to move this
You
skater
might be
park.
right. You
So
might
that's kind of where
actually
I'm
be
getting
right.
at, you know, we don't know that for sure, so
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there because, you know, to me,
No,
we
you're
also,
wise to do it.
we also have the whole concept of the foundation, you know, only putting out so many grants. So I'm just saying, all right, if we don't get the answers we want, and we're hoping that we get what we want, but there's a chance we may not get it, are we then okay with moving in this direction to start kind of, you know, going after that site as the second one, to start asking questions? Maybe we gotta take this site engineer, we gotta, you know, to take a little ride down there and get a little bit more, you know, around it.
But that's what we agreed
Actually,
last week.
probably less problem in the physical location at that spot as there is the public relations with the abutters. That's the
Well, that's,
the
yeah.
difficulty there.
Would you guys like me to reach out to the Fur Friends to check in on their thoughts on that location?
For both of them, or
Well, at
do
least
they have any visibility into either or at this point?
I don't know. I would
They
think they're
have-
watching.
Yeah, they
online, so
know
Would hope
I
so.
feel like I
pretty
would
much
know
where
if
we
they
are.
don't like it, but I wouldn't be opposed to
Yeah.
checking in and
Yeah, I would
making
just
sure
validate, I
they're
would
because
just
we do want them
validate.
to want
Yes,
the site.
yes,
so-
they have to want the site, or we lose
So
that.
Boyce Street, the only I do know there are, just like there were before, their serious concern there is the neighbors and the proximity of how many houses are there. And
Parking's not great unless we find ways to build parking into the existing
yes,
space.
and the parking, but primarily ending up with another pack chug situation where you have 30 angry neighbors coming out. So I think they're afraid of that potential with that spot, is what I was told. So assuming they're watching this and they haven't contacted us and said they don't like the Lemansky site, I would think they do it, but I would like to confirm that if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Makes sense to me. Let's just double check. It's
Sure,
just a phone
doesn't
call.
hurt. Yep.
His two sites we're considering. You okay with them? Great.
Yep.
If no, what's the problem?
Okay.
Did we cover at all what the purpose of the meeting that you guys set up for Friday with Julie and the town engineer? And maybe share what kind of, my understanding is you guys have a meeting this Friday. Could you guys share a little bit as to,
Asking me if I would come, yeah.
can the rest of us maybe get a sense of what that meeting's about, what we hope to?
I guess it's only to see whether or not what we have said to this point is possible from an engineering standpoint,
Okay.
when I look at, what the town manager has said to me. I haven't spoken with anyone else, so I'm not, I'm not sure what the professional engineers will say.
Okay. Well, the only other thing I would say is that I think I haven't I've presented in front of executive boards, but I've not presented in front of a town government structure before. So I don't know to what level, cost analyses are needed. I mean, I don't believe that just saying, we looked at 4 or 5 dog parks, and usually the general cost was $240K, and kind of putting that up on a slide and that being sufficient from a fiscal management standpoint. I think you need to go a little bit deeper on that so that we're all aligned in terms of what the effort is. I think kind of getting some confirmation from Julie would be a good thing to say, based on past projects and how you've gone ahead with presenting cost analysis to the Board of Selectmen, what's the level of detail that's appropriate, so that A, we're not spinning our wheels if we don't have to, and B, we don't under-deliver and end up getting in a spot where that's not telling us enough. I think if we get a baseline on what that is, then that will help us be more targeted in the work that we have to do in the cost analysis.
Did anyone have a chance to look at, a couple of weeks ago, you had talked about the dog officer's PowerPoint slide that was available on the Town of Auburn site? And you had referred,
Yeah.
us
What was
to
it,
look
had a
at that.
name for the whole presentation, yeah.
Right, it had on
Bark
there,
something,
Bark in the park.
Bark in the Park, yeah.
that's what it was called?
That was called,
Oh,
yeah.
I missed that, sorry. I was like, Park in the Park.
Yep.
On that, it had some of the cost analysis. In no way was it as close in detail to what we are preparing at this point. In other words, this far exceeds what she did. But that presentation was kind of, I think, a great example of what we may want to construct, because it addressed community relations, and it addressed cost, and it addressed the Stanton Foundation process, given that that's kind of what we want the selectmen to approve, ideally. So that might be a good model to use, and we could expand from that.
If
Just
the
as a
selectmen are
suggestion.
convinced that the money is available from the Stanton Foundation, that should alleviate their biggest concerns, or
Right.
their most public concerns. It should, the fact that professional engineers have been involved so far from the town, might also aid us in the draft budget for Stanton's. But Stanton's try to aim you to hiring certain firms to design it for you. So there is, the switch over there from local to a professional dog park designing firm that that somehow concerns me. I think most of the work could be done by our local engineers. I don't think that with the information that Stanton has given us as to what the possibilities are and what the options are, I don't think that it would require necessarily a professional dog park engineering, although they try to steer you that way, and that's why they've said they're changing the number that they might finance in a particular year.
Is it that they need architects? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
really understand the process of professional design at all, but is that because they need architects?
Well, I think it's because the people awarding the grant have that background in dog park engineering, that they want people who have done that specific work before to be involved for you.
Well, that then,
Our engineering department does a considerable amount of work for the town, and it's pretty good work from what I've seen. So that's where I'm concerned, is what happens. Can we design the draft construction document that Stanton is looking for?
I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do it.
I don't see why we wouldn't, and it would
Other
certainly
towns
save us.
have done it. I
Yeah.
mean, this isn't like a maiden voyage that we're
Yeah.
taking on for the first time anywhere in the world. I mean, it's
No.
been done many times.
And I also feel considerable effort was invested by the town to do the Pekachuk site. I think a lot of the preliminary work was done. I'm sure a lot of it can be easily synthesized to meet like this site.
Just as just a point, I'm looking. I've scrolled through twice this park and the park, and I've seen nothing about costs. A breakdown or a slide that says costs or how much this would cost. Whatsoever. So I don't know if they've changed the name of it. In terms of the file name, it's still called Barkington Park on the title slide. And maybe they changed something, pulled something down, pulled something out. But I'm looking at it right now. I don't see anything about costs.
And I think that's mainly because they didn't expect the town to have any share in the cost. They thought the Fur Friends would pick up whatever was the town's portion, and that the rest would come through the grant.
But referring to that document, when I looked at it, as well as when I was at the selectmen's meeting that evening, there were slides that were financial. And there were 3 people who presented. It was dog officer,
Amy,
the town
Matt,
planner,
and Eric
Matt,
Westbrook.
Benoit, the town planner.
and the third person.
Eric Westbrook's.
Thank you.
Yep.
And they conjointly presented. And
I would just say this. I think getting answers to questions and not assuming is, to me, is just you're just throwing more risk to timelines and you're throwing more risk to costs. And to ask simple questions, to get potential answers that more or less validate what we're thinking or considering is in our best interest. And I would also say, if somebody wants to go off and spend all kinds of money in the town, and I'm sitting there in the crowd, and maybe this is just me, and I want to spend X amounts of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's put together in a couple of crib sheets on a slide, I would tear that apart. Because I would accuse the town of poor fiscal management and misuse of how we spend our tax dollars. That's just me. Maybe it's good that I go to the meeting if I see that. But I'm not saying we need to have financial reports made, but I think let's get, from the emails, some communications I've got back from Julie, I get the sense that some level of detail is required to substantiate what you asked for. Now, what the line is, I don't know. How much they need to do. To me, I would think that yeah, we should be able to give a good, view of it, but they probably gotta tune it up even more when it comes time to submitting the application for, the foundation. So, I don't wanna, personally, I don't wanna invest more time than we have to. So let's ask the questions, let's get some data points back so that we can then align to what gives us the best chance of success, because I think that's what we all want here. I don't want to see us go up there and they say, well, you've got these general things, where's the data that supports it? And then we have to then go back, meet again, the process gets stretched out, we then run more risk in terms of our ability to maybe secure the grant, because now the calendar keeps shifting. Let's not open ourselves up to those potential risks.
Maybe I'm not understanding. Can you help me understand, given that I do not do cost analysis for a living, so I'm not innately familiar with the process, what data would be helpful that has not already been requested?
We have no measurements on anything. So for instance, all you've been able to provide us is unit cost. So for instance, I'll give you an example. If something costs $10 and we don't know whether we need 50 or 100 or 1,000, that's a big difference, and we're only going to know that until somebody takes a look at the site plan and knows where the different pieces are that are on the site, but then can provide some measurements around it. Now, how specific do you need to go out there and get a ruler and a tape measure and measure that out, versus can I use the technology on the maps online and make a few little points to get that? I don't know. That's where, I would say get the guidance. But just to say that, well, we estimate it's, $1 per, square foot of mulch. We have no idea how much mulch that is. I mean, that's not giving anybody any amount of fair information to be able to make a good business decision. You're just giving them a blank checkbook and saying good luck. Does that make sense? We have no idea what the quantities are on any of these measurements. Linear feet, we don't know square area, and all that stuff is necessary in order to get the total cost. No way about it.
Right, so that's why the engineer would be involved, right?
Yeah, we need to get the town engineers involved.
Absolutely.
Right,
And again, give us some guidance. Again,
right.
if they want to put two numbers on a slide and they think that's enough to get the selectmen to vote on it, great, let's try that. But if it's not, then let's know that before we go in there and we don't waste our time and then run the risk of pushing our timeline even further on the calendar. Summertime's coming. My intent is to hopefully that we've gone in there, we've got a decision, and we see maybe some construction and design work happening by the end of this year before the snow comes.
Sure.
Not to be talking about this, when the new school year
Right.
comes up, because then we're looking at 2018.
Right. So do we have a communication with the engineer? I'm hearing that there's a potential meeting on Friday.
No, the town manager
Yes.
suggested that she would set one up
Okay. Okay.
with the dog officer, the planner, the assistant engineer, and the engineer.
Okay.
And you have compiled a list, right? Based on your email, based on your spreadsheet.
I put something together.
And I took that.
Yep.
and I emailed that to the town engineer, requesting the data. As well as using your language, you wanted a site visit for the purpose that you explained.
Okay. So then to me, the next step is just getting calendars in terms of availability. How many people need to be there? There's 3 people that are on the subcommittee for the cost analysis. I would think that at least 2 of us should be there with the site engineer. So we can ask questions, grab some notes, see what he thinks, and then take back whatever we learned and bring it and share it with the rest of the group. Is that reasonable?
Yep.
Sure is.
So are you running point on getting that? Do we need to maybe, I don't know if we have to do it right this second, but do we need to maybe give you some availability slots on when we can do it, and then you'll go ahead and coordinate with the town manager? Would you like one of us to do it? I don't really care either way.
I don't see that it's our job to do availability at this point. I think the next logical step would be to wait for a reply, as I explained earlier, with the information. Then when we have the information, we input it,
What information?
the information you requested.
The email that she sent over.
Okay. My understanding is there's a meeting on Friday, and that you two invited, the town manager's gonna be there, and that the, Julie's going to be there. That's my understanding. So I'm kinda getting a little, I don't know, man, I've got data points and emails that show this to me, so I guess I'm a little kind of perplexed as to, you guys don't seem to know about the meeting, meetings are getting
No, we know
scheduled,
about the meeting.
and we
But
weren't
we know
informed about it.
that the meeting was established by the town manager. So we're going, because the town manager suggested that. And the engineer is going because the town manager told him to be there. And the other people that are going, who are town employees, are going because the town manager has set them on that path. That's their assignment. It's not that we assigned or that we requested a meeting on that date. It's that the town manager did that.
Okay. It just kind of sounded like this was already in the know, and the rest of us weren't in the loop on it. So
No.
that was my concern.
I'm sorry, that weren't in the loop about what, Jim?
It sounded, I mean, up until the point that I brought it up, I don't seem to think that anybody knew that you guys were potentially going to be in a meeting on Friday with the town planner and the town manager. So I was just, that's why I bring it up, because I'm hearing, and then, through email communications that I'm getting, that that's happening, and we're not all necessarily aligned on what all that's about, and we're all supposed to be on the same team and the same committee. I think that, we want to make sure that we're all.
Well, I think what it was is that we've sent the information about what we wanted. And the manager has picked that up and said, well, this is how I will attempt to address that.
Okay, so next question then. When can we expect to get output from that meeting? In terms of an email or something? I mean, are we waiting to the next, 2 weeks
Well,
from 2 weeks from today?
That would be the most likely. We can't send you all an email. We know that that doesn't comply
That's against
with
the
the
law.
open meeting law.
Understood, so I'm just trying to.
So
work-
it would be-
We'd have to be at a regular meeting.
Is that meeting gonna be televised?
No,
Let me know.
I shouldn't say no that sounded, but usually the employees' meetings are not.
I think I'm understanding that you need to know quantity, but you're asking for an output. So in non-engineering terms, you're asking for information as a result of that meeting?
What's the next steps? I mean, is he gonna go out?
Well, I
and-
think he's gonna say, this is, you can use this, but not
Because
that.
again, in my mind, I'm reverse engineering as we're talking about this, right? We talked about trying to hit an early April Board of Selectmen meeting, right? And we don't have anything concrete in terms of dates, and we have a lot of dependencies and a lot of, please, if you all think that I'm on a different planet, by all means, speak up and let me know. But that's what we had tried to agree to, is that's where we were heading. And I'm seeing a lot of things that are dependencies, and because of because of the structure of how we meet on an every other week basis, that potentially is going to become a problem where it pushes out the timeline.
In no way, I don't know. I certainly don't feel comfortable determining the work priorities of another individual. My understanding is there's many committees that are putting work requests in to town professionals on an ongoing basis, and we are one of them. So after I received your email, whenever that was, I would have to look early part of the week, fair to say? Monday-ish?
Yep.
I turned around that day and contacted the town engineer. So in my brain, that would put us in a queue as of that date to put our request for information in. Is that fair to say?
Is it feasible to say that you guys are gonna get that answer on Friday?
And I agree with everything you said, I got no problems with that about it. All I'm saying is, you're gonna get some updates on Friday, and how can we
Right.
Well,
act to it and do
Jim,
something?
if updates is the
Answers.
right thing, or are we gonna get some questions? You know, does the engineer want to know
That's fine.
more specific from us? What size, for example, would be right?
I think
Or is he gonna draw maps such as you've done, Jim, and show us and say, now, which would satisfy your needs? So that it's gonna be, I think, a two-way question and answer.
I would agree.
He'll have some answers maybe,
Right.
but he'll want us to spell out really
But
what.
I think regardless of what happens Friday, with, them getting answers to us and vice versa, we're not gonna be able to meet again to discuss those issues until 2 weeks from today. And then,
Which is, if that's the
That's
plan,
the plan.
then I'm just bringing up to the surface that potentially is gonna put us in jeopardy of maybe not being able to meet
Do we,
an early April date.
do we want to meet next week instead?
Or you could meet as a subcommittee.
I was about.
Yeah.
That's
so
like,
the
that's
three of
part
you
of it,
meet.
because we'll probably
You're
meet
going to the
again.
meeting, right?
We're
You
gonna-
three could
right.
meet before 2
Okay.
weeks from.
And that's fine too. All I'm saying is, we need a plan as opposed to, I mean, about 20 minutes ago, we were ready to just call the meeting, and I can understand that we wanna, go on to other things, but at the same time, I look at kind of how this is all unfolding and the potential risks around it, and if we don't kind of, align on some things, we can be very well talking about this in June and July, and as I stated, that's not my game plan.
Well, I think that's why we created the subcommittees, so that we could work not just on the every other Wednesdays.
And the subcommittees,
Now, do we have any
because they're
restrictions?
they're not
No.
quorum
No.
committees,
It's
can meet
not a
Right.
quorum.
on off days.
Right.
No, we met it after weeks.
If we decide we need
We got
to
food.
meet independently, open meeting law does not apply, because there's
Right.
3 of us.
Yes.
So you guys could meet 10 times
Yeah.
before 2
Right.
weeks.
We could have
And that would be
daily
a
coffee
good idea.
meetings.
Yeah.
We'll do virtual meetings.
I think
All
that's
right,
the
well
best
then-
way to make progress.
Well, then based
And
Quicker.
we've made progress.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
groups have come in with, with a lot of information that we did not have a week ago. So you've done a lot of work in a week.
And that I wouldn't debate. I just don't think we're at a point where we've got a rock solid,
No.
this is
No,
a
no,
go
definitely
forward
not.
thing type
Yeah.
of stuff.
But
Definitely
there's
not.
nothing more
And
that's
we know
achievable today.
From the packet shot, from the Upland Street experience, that we may never have a rock solid position.
And if I may say, I think the reality of dealing with town government is, even with the perfect site, in the perfect scenario, it's still not a rock solid.
Yeah.
right.
Unfortunately, there's always shifting dynamics. And that's the reality of any type of government.
All right, so I think the decision on the table is that are we able to have a touch base meeting for the cost analysis sub-team, perhaps Wednesday of next week, or Monday, or depending
Or
on what
anytime.
we
Well, you guys
learn.
can
Whatever
We
you
can, we
Or-
can
Whatever
discuss
the
that.
schedules are.
Or are we waiting to the 15th and understanding that?
No, no, no,
that's
I don't
We
potential?
can
think
meet
so. I
prior
think we'll-
as
Okay.
a subgroup.
No one is disputing the fact that we can communicate at any point in any way that we so choose.
Yes, you can communicate, you can't make a decision, that's
Right.
all.
All right, so then, because, what I was hearing from you before is I thought we needed some sort of majority, so what I'm hearing is, if Elise is at that meeting and she gets the output, then there's nothing from her that's stopping her from sharing it with us. So
With the
we-
two of
So
you.
effectively,
Yes,
we can
with
get
the
it in
two of
real
you.
time.
Correct.
But I may
She can share
only
with the two
share
of
it
you.
with the two of
With the
you.
two.
Okay,
And we
well,
can
that's the workflow I'm trying to work out here.
Yeah.
But
That's
to
that's fine.
clarify
Yeah.
again, we can only exchange information. We cannot make decisions because we are not a majority.
That's fine. So, I'm good with that. So if we can do that,
Okay.
And we'll discuss, obviously, we'll keep going.
Yes.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
Our goals for next time. What do we want to come to the next meeting prepared with?
I think from a cost analysis point of view, we can't really answer that question yet until we know what
Yeah.
happens
Right.
Friday.
Friday.
Right.
And then we'll meet after that
Okay.
based on what happens.
I mean, the stretch goal is that we've been able to meet with the town engineer. We're able to get validation from the town manager on how much cost analysis stuff is needed in order to put it in front of the Board of Selectmen for, a vote. And then at that point, we'll be able to have more visibility into what the future roadmap looks like.
Could you restate the first goal, please?
Oh, wait a second.
Hi, sorry,
Hey.
how's everyone? I'm next door at a meeting.
I know.
But
We were
maybe-
looking for you.
I was gonna say, I was gonna talk to you and potentially you, Friday. We may not have to, if you can just, one quick thing we need. We need to know for Bill Coyle to help prepare some of the cost estimates. We need a little bit more specific information
That's fine.
on the size of the park and where you're gonna put it, because we can't, a 5-acre park versus a half-acre park is gonna be a lot different costs.
Sure.
So we were just gonna try to clarify at least your email with some of the questions, because
Yeah.
some of it we couldn't come up with a cost for you. So maybe we don't have to ask you again if I didn't realize you were here tonight, this is perfect. So just, if you can get that information to us, and then we can talk to Bill and we can work with you. But a couple things we just need a little bit more specific. Some of the things I noticed on the list are not eligible for the grant.
I understand
So,
that.
the friends had offered to potentially jump in and do things
That's what we
like that.
discussed.
So, whatever you can give us to be as specific as you can, that would be awesome. All right, thanks. And if you want to come, have some excitement when you're done. Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night. Thank you for all the
Thanks,
work.
Julie.
Bye.
So, with that, I like this one.
Yeah.
Yes, I
I
was
think
saying the same
I
thing.
do
I mean,
too.
if they
I
want-
like that.
If they want a
Thank you, for
size,
sure.
I like this one.
That's
Yeah,
that's the
thank you.
30,000, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. In fact, can we take that? Yeah.
Potentially, I don't think I read this. This is, again, this is the same email that I started to read about Boy Street from the dog officer a little while ago. The current size of the skate park is 13,500 square feet.
Which is
However,
very close
there
to,
is cost-
What you have there.
yeah, I've got 15,000
Yeah.
square feet, so
Right.
it's.
Less than 110 by
But
120.
she must be given just the footprint of the skate park itself,
Right.
nothing
That
beyond the
is,
fence.
right.
Right.
However, there is the possibility that additional land on either side of the park could be used, bringing the area closer to 26.5.
So I think the question is to the town manager is to take that diagram, and
As
say,
soon as possible.
this is aspirational, and maybe, we're certainly open if we maybe up the curve around a little bit.
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe it's like you come in at the corner of that parking lot, to the left is the small dogs, to the right is the
Is the
big
large
dogs,
dogs,
but
right.
it's really that area, and I guess the question is, as much as we can get up to 30,000 square feet,
Yeah.
is
How much
what we
can
would
have?
take.
How much can we have?
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
they
Yeah.
know. that
They know
press
exactly
the
how much we
space.
want.
That was
They
good.
know that that's gonna be,
Right.
a major problem.
But I would say that's question one.
Yeah.
But then the next question is the relocation of that.
Relocation
The
of that,
relocation of that. So we would need to know,
How much that's gonna
is there
What?
14, 15,000 square feet, 13 to 15,000 square feet up in this area that's up in the hills here?
on the other side of the
Right.
That's usable land. I mean, like I said, there's peaks and valleys there, so I mean, whether or not somebody, I think somebody needs to go out there and look at that before just going off and saying yes.
Yeah, we can do it. Right.
We've gone out and looked at that, and that was the area that the town employees, that Amy and the planners looked at and measured first in hopes that it would be big enough.
Right.
Yeah. So the third question that would be useful from the town manager is understanding where the services would come into that area. Because, are we getting them all the way from the street? Are they right there in the parking
They're
lot?
right there in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So if we know that for sure, then we can then use the map to then kind of, just kind of point to point, total footage, which then gives us some better input to then assess the cost to run lines for power, sewer, and water, which then will help us with cost analysis. So I would just say, can we, if we're talking to them, and this is showing, utility lines,
let's validate you can plug into right there, or you have to plug into a main location further up. I don't know that.
Right.
So we get the answers to those 3 questions, and, assuming the first one is yes, you can do 30,000 square feet within that area,
Yep.
because that's the critical one, and then B, the second critical one is we can relocate that.
Yep.
Well, now we're in business. Now we can move forward with refining cost analysis. If the answer is, no, we can't move it, or you need to take 20,000 square feet, then I guess, that's, those are wrenching things.
But the question still remains, the basic question is, will 3 selectmen say yes?
Yeah.
Because if 3 selectmen say no, you're finished, regardless of what information and what plans we've made, what approvals we've got. If we don't have that approval, we have nothing.
And frankly, that's a significant concern.
Yeah, that is.
As I said, I've gone back and I've listened to the previous meeting. I don't know, there were 2 meetings. There was the public meeting that was kind of a coup that involved the neighborhood. And then there was the subsequent meeting where the selectmen discontinued the process for that site. And I had made a list of the concerns that were raised by the selectmen, and I have that. And I thought that that might be a good tool
Yes.
in
Yeah.
helping us prepare for the meeting with the selectmen,
Yeah.
the ultimate presentation, because, and this is my opinion, my personal opinion, that they were very inquisitive, as their role is, to the point of being somewhat critical of Fur Friends when they were doing their presentation. So I
I'm sorry,
think
who's critical, the audience or the board?
selectmen. So having said that, no matter what the specificity of information, I think there is going to be criticism, because that is their role. But some of them, it is my opinion, are simply not in favor of the notion of a dog park.
Can you send us that list you wrote, or put it in the Google Drive or something?
Right now, it is my bad handwriting. So I could, would this be correct? I could send an email to the committee with data, but no, or actually that's, if I'm transcribing, that could be construed as my opinion.
If you wanna send it just to me, I can put it in the Google Drive where everybody can see it.
That might do it.
If you're not
Yeah.
comfortable
as
putting
long
it in the
as-
Google
Yeah.
Drive, or you're not comfortable putting it
As
in
long as we're
ours.
not, because that goes back to when I shared
Yeah.
that document, and I was told by Julie that was fine as long as we weren't discussing it.
Yeah.
Um,
As long as we don't talk about
As long
the
as we don't
document
talk
on the document.
Right.
Because the document, I guess it could be argued that the list, I'm inherently biased.
Yeah.
So the list, as I transcribe it, would be opinion, not fact.
Maybe.
I don't know. What do you think?
well,
I
the
mean, if
It's-
you're writing down a list of things that they said, that sounds more like fact.
Yeah. And if it's a list that's just being put in the Google Drive that we can all just look at, that we're not discussing offline or any other
Yeah.
time but this meeting.
Do they put any, these recordings, are they accessible on the
yes.
Yes,
site?
every-
So
yeah,
every
you can
single
go back
meeting
and
is
actually
on
get
You
the
can actually
video?
go look at
Every
it.
single
Yeah.
meeting is on
Well,
YouTube.
I don't know,
It's on
maybe just
YouTube.
the- I mean, you ever recall how long it might have been? An hour, 2 hours?
Quite long.
Yeah,
It
they're
was
hours.
painful.
They're very long.
It was painful. I mean, the neighborhood meeting was almost 3 hours. And then the meeting where the process was discontinued was at least 2.
Well, I would agree from the standpoint of just lessons learned that were called out in terms of potential gotchas, and then being able to strategize before you're walking into the same mousetrap again, then that's
agree.
absolutely a better way to go.
I agree, and I think,
And I
like I
think if
said,
you put it on there, then the cost committee can discuss the cost questions, and
Yep.
we can discuss the
Yep.
outreach questions.
yeah, and like I said, if it's a list of things they said, then it's just facts that they said them.
Right.
If it's the opinion of the committee that I can do it,
Sure.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
because I don't want to sit through and watch them again.
No, please don't make us watch it again.
It's painful. All right, so I will do that as soon as I
Thank
find
you.
the Google Drive link.
It's painful to watch it live. Trust me. While you're sick.
So, for us, for when we come back, I will talk to a couple realtor friends of mine about the property value question.
Okay.
And I want to get I want to obtain the list of abutters near the park. Not send them anything until we get an approval to send them things, but at least get that list.
And that you can get by going to Julie's office,
Okay.
and she will go through the assessors. You could go, maybe the assessors would do it for
Do
you,
you
but
want me to do that?
it would be easy
Or do you-
for Julie to ask her
Okay.
for the list of abutters to this property.
Did you want to do
Sure.
it? Okay, thank you.
Send an email,
Okay,
is what I would do.
Sure.
thank you. And you were going to make it ready.
You know what I wanted, I wanted to say to you
Bedazzled.
people who looked at those lists
Bedazzled.
too.
Not bad.
You'll notice that some of the properties are owned by people who don't live there. That means a property that's owned
rented.
but rented. So, you know, that's why someone in Somerville may own a property next to the dollar.
Yeah, but the businesses count though. The
Yeah.
skate, the ice skating rink and the.
No,
No.
well, I don't think that will be on there, no.
No,
I think it'll just
so.
be the
I think
homes.
it's
Because it's-
residential.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we won't be able to finalize the flyer until we know what the cost will be to relocate.
Yes, the skate park.
It's a skate park, right?
Yep. Okay.
But I can make it and then always adjust it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it sounds like you guys are just more or less in fine tuning mode,
Yes.
you know? And then when you get a green light to say, move,
Do it.
Yeah.
you move.
Yeah.
And you're gonna talk to your students?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm interested to see what.
Yeah, I'll
they
let you know.
Yeah. When you talk to the engineer, I would also like to know how, it would be good information to know how long it would take to move the skate park. How long the park would be closed?
That's a good question.
Because the kids are gonna wanna know. 'cause it-
ACA argument, right?
And,
Affordable care, same argument that we hear there. Can we repeal it, or do we have to have the replacement before we repeal it?
Oh, don't even.
anyway. It's, cause, it's gonna matter if it's closed for a couple weeks or a couple months.
Yes,
Big
especially
difference.
over the summer.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that it's a couple of weeks, it's gotta be more
So-
than that.
So yeah, it would be nice to know when you speak to the engineer,
Yeah.
how long it's gonna take
The
to
money,
rebuild it.
it'll be 2 weeks.
Can you even get it, I mean, just going up to that area again, can you even get a truck up there? Could you get it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then that's good news. Looks like now you're gonna get an asphalt truck to kind of.
Oh, yeah, no, they
No,
they
in
have
fact,
to.
have
highway
to go all the way around the
department
other side.
collects from the receptacles that they have scattered throughout the park, and they go pretty much anywhere on there.
Yeah, when they
Roads
used to
and
have
roads.
the fall and summer festivals, they had all kinds of trucks
Yeah.
coming in with tents and
Right.
Horses.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. It's gonna take 2 weeks.
Okay, 15 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see how it happens.
If you've ever seen the Money Pit, that's a good movie. 2 weeks. It's gonna take 2 weeks.
I would say 2 months, that's assuming you had everything lined up in advance.
That's not 15 days.
That's the thing, is like 2
Or-
months in the summer for the skate park is kind of long.
That's a long
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Because in the summer it is used a lot.
Yeah.
Except they can do most of the work
Yeah.
on that area,
That's-
because that's not
That's the
That's
differentiator,
displacing
yeah.
anybody, so.
They can basically build the
Yeah.
footprint, and then it just becomes a matter of moving the
Moving the stuff.
structures, and
Yeah.
that probably is really the time frame that you're looking at, you get down to
That
a
won't
small
be bad.
amount.
All right. Anything
That's my answer for
Is
everything.
there anything else?
else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
No,
I
you gotta
mo-
make
I
a
mo-
motion.
you motion. All right, I motion to adjourn.
It's been moved that we adjourn and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those so voted.